Hello everyone and welcome to this week's Game Debate LiveCast. I hope everyone's had a good couple of weeks. We have been off the last few weeks, mainly because I've been away for a bit. And yeah, so we've had about 2 weeks off now, so I think it's been 3 weeks since the last LiveCast. So we've got quite a bit to cover going in from there. This week we do have two sort of different people with us than we normally do. So to give them a bit of introduction. So first of all, we have Lucas back with us again, who is now the founder of a new game studio called Good Sport Games. Lucas, how have you been?
Hello, how are you doing? Yes, not so bad, thank you. Yes, been very busy with the Greenlight launch, which we'll talk about in a bit. But yes, it's fun times.
Cool. And we also have this week, we have Ryan with us, and Ryan is new. He is a friend of mine and also a game journalist who previously has written for Xbox Magazine about games and stuff. Ryan, how's it going?
Good. Been keeping back the alien incursion on XCOM.
Damn. Have you got far in XCOM yet?
I think so, but it's so freaking hard. Been using the load button a lot. But I think that's the same as everyone, right? Everyone cheats.
Not me. I'm Iron Man in Classic.
Liar.
Oh, sorry, Commander. So that's going interestingly.
Cool. So I think we're live now on Twitch. So we've got quite a few. We've got 70 people already watching us, which is good. And I thought this week we've got quite a bit to cover. So we're going to go over. First of all, we're going to talk about some of the stuff from Epic Games just been coming out about Microsoft's new UWP software, which people are wondering if it's going to destroy the PC gaming market completely. We've also going to talk about a bit about Far Cry and a bit of controversy around that. Alongside that, we also have some news this week about that you hate it when you can't remember the topics you spent all week preparing. Also we're going to talk about virtual reality as well, so we're going to have a look at the Vive compared to the Rift and give you a bit of a heads up of sort of what system requirements we need for that and which headset you'll go for in the end. And we're also going to talk about Lucas's new game coming out, which is about football and corruption. Probably
sports and corruption.
Sports and corruption.
Just to be technical, and for plenty of reasons, which I won't go into. But
I think some people might say potentially the most interesting part about sports would be the corruption side of it.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for. But again, we'll come back to it and leave it as a tantalising cliffhanger.
Yeah.
That's what.
Cool. So the first story this week. So if you've been following sort of the gaming news at all, you might have noticed that Tim Sweeney, who is currently the CEO of Epic Games, has spoken about Microsoft's plans to unify their mobile PC and Xbox platforms using a new piece of software or middleware, I guess you might call it, called UWP. And what this is it's basically Microsoft are looking to release their own app store, and they have their own platform that goes alongside this, which allows developers to write apps for something like Windows Phone and then easily port it across to desktop and to Xbox as well. He had quite a few sort of controversial statements to make about it. His first sort of opening comments, this was in an article he wrote for The Guardian. He said that this is the first apparent step towards locking down the consumer PC ecosystem and monopolizing app distribution and commerce. So I think it's quite clear that Tim thinks this is probably a pretty negative thing to the games industry for them looking to release their own app store. But I mean, around the issue, it's been a bit confusing because, I mean, UWP is not necessarily just about games. And he's telling one of his comments as well was mentioning about that we should be looking at what Microsoft are doing as opposed to what they're saying. And so for the early parts of it now, what they've done is they've released sort of this lock store with some specific Windows 10 features that you can only access if you release something through UWP and not going through Steam or sort of downloading it as an external app. And that was what sparked his outrage. But yeah, I'm not too sure. So I guess, Ryan, you sort of looked over what Tim's saying, and if you could sum up his concerns, what do you think that he's really worried about, and do you think that this is deserved from Microsoft at all?
So it's pretty clear that he's very much worried about the UWP becoming very much an enclosed system and nothing really being creatively controlled, and basically no one allowed to create anything outside of that system. So for someone like Epic, that's obviously going to be a big issue, because if they're going to be locked down to one kind of store, then they're not going to be able to kind of expand their markets or look to other places. But he's very much hostile about it. So he's seen what he's something that's been very much under wraps at the moment. A lot of people haven't really been talking about this, and he basically wrote this piece for The Guardian. So he very much went out of his way. Clearly, I mean, I wouldn't say that they've gone to him and said, "What? Could you provide any words on this?" He's definitely contacted them and looked for like a big platform to kind of have his view, and he's made a very good job of it, because now everyone's talking about it. Now we're talking about it, and he's obviously unhappy that PC's basically aiming towards this idea of being an enclosed system, all based around Microsoft. And basically, he doesn't want it to be Apple. I mean, that's the main problem, right? He doesn't want Microsoft and Windows to end up like Apple.
I mean, it's interesting because a lot of the stuff he's concerned about and the stuff he's saying, it's not about stuff that's actually happened already. It's about stuff that is apparently going to happen and where he thinks it's going as a whole. And I think, that's probably one of the main problems with it, is that he's arguing very much against what he thinks is going to happen, as opposed to... But it's difficult, I guess, because like I can from his perspective definitely about closing down. So with the App Store, unless he's by locking specific features, it definitely seems like they're going in that direction where they do want to sort of make a smaller ecosystem for them to work. But I mean, Lucas, have you done anything with UWP, or do you know sort of a bit about it at all?
Well, I mean, I know from I suppose, this is where I feel UWP is going to be aimed at the moment, is towards the app side of things. So, you see games such as Candy Crush, you see games such as Jetpack Joyride, things like that, where you've seen they've made a sort of mobile conversion to desktop. So they've converted their app to a PC standalone game, and they've put it onto, say, the Windows Store, for example. So you can then look at, you can play the same game but on PC. But those games are very specifically games where they can be grouped in such a way. They're not, say, a Tomb Raider, say a Battlefield, a Call of Duty, or anything like that, where how would you make that run on a mobile? It'd be a ridiculous assertion. And the thing for me is, I still think it's a bit early at this point to be accusing Microsoft of anything, where I think their push with UWP really is on the app side. So it is, for example, making Microsoft Word, work on a PC, a phone, a tablet, so on and so forth, and making iterations that fit all those things. And I think that's a fine principle to try and design to. It's a bit early to start accusing Microsoft of trying to close. Well, it's just. Again, there's a logistical thing of that's not going to be possible for games. So I think it's a little bit early to start accusing them of doing that when, I don't even think it's be technically possible to actually, to stop such a, to do such a practice for certain games, really.
Because what his main fear is, it seems to be like that Windows and Microsoft are planning on just locking down the entire Windows platform and not letting anyone publish anything unless it goes through their store, which isn't what Microsoft are trying to do, and I don't think they would ever try and do that. And if you look
well, hold on, there was accusations a few years ago where it sounded like they were trying to do something similar when they were first sort of, I think when Windows 10 was first started to be produced. There was some suggestion that you had to download apps through the Windows Store. Now, that's again not saying it's entirely closed off, and those apps can't be in the apps you use, such as Steam, such as other game clients, whatever else, couldn't be in the Windows Store. But there was a bit of a thing where actually, basically they're prescribing you to go through that route, and you have to be approved to be allowed to be an app on said, on the Windows Store.
Yeah,
and that's. You can actually run or download things, or be very difficult to through any other sources. You couldn't just download an executable from a website and run it and install something. You had to almost go through that step. So yeah, Microsoft aren't entirely without sort of some sort of form. And again, I'm not sure how substantiated those sort of accusations or rumors were, but they've come from somewhere.
So I guess to Ryan then, do you think that this is a problem where some government or some governing body should step in and try and fix it, or do you think? I mean, because I think the real issue here is that Microsoft are a monopoly basically already. They pretty much run almost all the software on any computer anywhere in the world. So if they want to make a lockdown store, it is their software, it is their stuff running on it.
Yeah, the issue really, on the surface of it, it's kind of hard to say if this should be a legal issue. It doesn't seem like it should be. It's very much a business practice, and when you've got alternatives out there, you can't really cry monopoly, because the fact is you can buy a Mac, and I know that for a lot of people that's not really an option, but like if you look on the legality of it, it is. There's no argument around that. But it is interesting, just I mean, that the links to Apple, and Apple have been doing it for years. So would Microsoft do it? Yes, happily. Do they want to do it? I would say definitely. And they're sort of at the moment trying to sort of fight fires. Like Tim Sweeney is a big pyromaniac in that way, sort of ruining it. But yeah.
I mean, to sort of jump in there, I mean, it is a commercial decision at the end of the day. So if the market demand dictates that people don't want it, you probably get the same Xbox climb down where, we want this to be this media center of whatever else, when they first announced the Xbox One and everyone going, where's games? And they having to almost back down their assertions or re-emphasize their marketing to do that. If it really became an issue, I appreciate obviously Microsoft being a big, monopoly of in the OS market, but an alternative would always, I would imagine, somebody would then see that hole in the market and make an alternative which will do exactly what people want, and they have to judge that decision, I suppose. But we'll see if they actually do want to do that.
I mean, I think it is a bit of a grey area. I think that someone will have to step in, essentially, at some point, if they do decide to close down Microsoft as an open platform, because there's no real viable alternative, I think, for most people to switch to. And if you look at it from the perspective, so now we've got web browsers so Microsoft are forced to show people other options to install a web browser when they first install Windows. And I think this very much comes under that aspect of it, where because they do have such an obscene control and domination of the PC market, that they do have to be regulated, and they do have to be sort of allowed or forced even to make room for smaller developers and other software developers. Because if they didn't, they'd they have the if they did lock it down, they have the chance they could potentially crumble so many companies around the world, I think.
Well, it's their choice. I mean, your example of the Internet Explorers, that's right, but that's only, I think, in Europe or even the UK. It comes down to the individual countries and their legislation, and that would be the actual challenge. There is who's going to dictate it, who's going to actually, there's no global governing thing of, you have to, for some countries there probably isn't even a sort of fair trade thing where they say, you can't have monopolies, so you can't have global companies dominating the market. It's very individual. So I think Microsoft probably may do it for other countries just as a good policy. And again, I think public pressure will bend things more than any legislation would. If people boycotted Microsoft, when people boycotted, their services, their app store, then it wastes everyone's time.
Yeah.
The interesting thing though is that we're talking almost as if it's completely closed off, which is not even, it's not remotely what Microsoft are trying to say. And all their replies and in their initial kind of line is that the UWP is supposed to be, you can buy things from other stores, you can do the same sort of things you can do with Steam now, and potentially use Steam still as well. So maybe it's not the kind of horror show it's definitely not the horror show that Tim Sweeney's trying to make out, but I would argue that the very much valid points that he makes, but it's very much exaggerated.
So, and Microsoft did respond. So Microsoft's response, which I'll try and read quickly, it's from Kellen Gallo, who's
Yeah.
the corporate vice president of Microsoft. He basically said the Universal Windows platform is a fully open ecosystem available to every developer that can be supported by any store. We continue to make improvements to developers. For example, in the Windows 10 November update, we enable people to easily sideload apps by default and with no UX required. And we want to make Windows the best development platform regardless of technologies used, and offer tools to help developers with existing code bases of HTML, JavaScript, .NET, Win32, C++, blah, 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 and bring their code to Windows and integrate UWP capabilities, blah, 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 more PR. UWP can not only reach all Windows 10 devices, but there's now a large percentage of C# apps that can work natively on mobile experiences for iOS and Android. We're also posting in our blog about all our new development tools coming out. So they've hit back very much with full force, talking about how it is basically they are trying to keep an open platform, and because they actually haven't done anything yet, I guess it's quite easy for them to do it. And there's, when they announced the Xbox originally, when they were going to have all that stuff, they were going to have it all locked down to disks and loads of DRM, and then they backtracked in the end and said, oh, actually, no, we're not going to do that anymore. So who knows what their intention is or what they're doing, but I'm sure we'll see over the coming weeks when Microsoft bans Steam and Uplay and only Windows
Uplay?
exists.
Not Uplay.
Oh, Uplay and Origin.
How could they?
Oh. Right. So, moving on. So if you have just joined us, this is the Game Debate Livecast, where each week we go over the latest gaming news from industry, insider people, and developers, and me as well. This week I'm joined by Lucas and Ryan. Lucas is the founder of Good Sports Games, who is here promoting his new game coming out soon, and also joined by Ryan, who is a games journalist as well. Okay, so the next thing we wanted to go over is a bit of a look at Far Cry Primal. So Far Cry Primal came out this week with a bit of a mixed reception, I think. There's been quite a few sort of interesting allegations coming out about the game since it got launched. The one that sort of caught my eye and that I thought was quite interesting was that the fact that Far Cry Primal, apparently, some people are speculating, saying that it wasn't actually meant to be a full sort of $60 full AAA title, and it was actually meant to be more like Blood Dragon was, and they released that last year. But apparently, because Assassin's Creed wasn't having a full title release this year, they wanted to release a full price game, that decision ended up being with Far Cry Primal coming out as one of the sort of the lead platforms games this year. And there's a couple of reasons for it. So a couple of the reasons for the rumor. So one of them, they never really mentioned about the game at E3, and they only sort of briefly mentioned about it once it was leaked. And it was all very quick, and there was no sort of big PR stunt before it. Especially not like Far Cry 3 or 4. I mean, it's a potentially a valid argument, but as well, like Fallout 4 wasn't announced till 5 months before it came out, so maybe not. The development cycle as well is almost identical to Blood Dragons, so I think it's a bit longer. But apart from that, they started working on it at the same time that they started working on Blood Dragon, which could suggest some similarities with it. Alongside that, it's a new setting with the game, which actually has less in it than the other sort of games do. They've stripped out a lot of the mechanics, sort of guns and cars, expectingly, and they've replaced it with a lot of, being back in the Stone Age now, a lot of the weapons are very limited with how everything works. And that's mainly it, really. So, Brian, have you played many of the Far Cry games? Have you enjoyed them?
Yeah. So I'm like a hipster on that one because I remember playing the original, and I even really loved Far Cry 2, which I think is like massively underrated. It had like the best level editor of like most FPS games.
The one where you have malaria.
But no. Yeah, the one where you have malaria. So you're making it sound stupid. It's not that stupid. Okay, it was cool at the time, all right? At the time, oh man, I guess it was a long time ago it came out. But anyway, yeah, so I mean, I've kind of had my fair experience with Far Cry, and I'm actually quite looking forward to getting my hands on Primal and playing it. Because I don't know, sometimes I just enjoy those kind of sit down, stupid, dumb Ubisoft games where, I'm gonna do the same thing I've done about 50 times before. Sometimes, you just need that. You just need it.
I guess.
So
Have you so you haven't picked up Far Cry Primal yet? Because I played a bit of it, and I know from like the first impression, you start off and it's like, oh, okay, you kick off, there's like some cool cutscenes, and then basically you have to just constantly gather stuff like throughout the game. So you have to make each arrow individually. You don't have cars, moving around pretty slow. But yeah, I mean, from a game development perspective, Lucas, what are the chances, do you think, that they may have started this as a smaller title and just like sort of tried to flush it out? Does it scream that to you, or do you think that's an assumption that no one can really make?
I mean, in some ways, I don't even know if it matters, because it depends on how it would have been felt and it affected the end product. Contextually, I sort of feel like they've deliberately, they have obviously stripped things back, but I also think contextually that makes sense. So, for example, you wouldn't have a way of driving because there's no cars in Primary. You wouldn't have, you have a very stripped down thing of weapons and crafting, because again, it's the Stone Age. And so yes, and I think from the marketing side perspective, I can sort of see they may have decided to change their mind on that. Perhaps when they realised either that the game might be more popular than they thought, so maybe they thought they were taking a risk of doing this spin-off, and thought, okay, maybe actually they need to do that, but again, maybe they found out that actually there's more market demand for it than they thought, so they thought, okay, let's make it a full price thing and let's charge more money. But yeah, from the development side, Far Cry is sort of Far Cry. Like, I mean, that's the key difference, I would say, from Blood Dragon to Primal, was the fact that the Blood Dragon is quite a linear experience, actually. It's very much more set play, set level thing, whereas Primal's open world. So, unless they sort of had that similar thing and then changed their minds later, that would suggest to me that they've always thought of it as a grander, more normal Ubisoft experience. Because
I think the thing for me is, if they get rid of cars, they get rid of like the amount of limitation. They restrict weapons more. But in that case, I feel like they should be adding in something different. So if you're going to take out cars, you're going to take out something else. You need to add in like something quite a bit, something to patch up the differences. I mean, they've got animals in there.
Exactly, and you can possess them.
But I mean, what's that missing feature? I mean, again, the contextualization of the game sort of limits it, and it depends how realistic you're going. Because I can easily understand again that the thing of cars, but then again, that's me. From a design perspective, I'd be like, actually, let's tone down the world size. Need it to be quite so big. Let's make it actually you can traverse across the map in 5 minutes rather than maybe 5 hours or something. I haven't seen the sides, but I think if you're doing Far Cry 3, for example, that'd be a ridiculous walk. But
I like it that you brought up the map size. So there was a couple of publications this week that published a map. So if you look now, basically for Far Cry 4 to Far Cry Primal, it looks like they very much copied the map. And sort of just raise some elevation around and down a bit. And I mean, they've done it by looking at the locations of the water. And to be honest, it does look pretty identical, I think.
Yep.
But I mean, I think as a thing on its own, it's not really that bad, because I don't think if you're running around the environment, I reckon they've changed it enough that you wouldn't really notice any of this stuff, or notice like it is the same map. And everyone I've spoken to who's played it definitely didn't realise it was. But it just raises that question and sort of plants a bit more doubt about like the originality of like the whole game, and of just, is it just a rushed out mess of everything?
I think the thing again for me is I really don't I don't have the issue of people reusing assets and reusing their work as long as they do something interesting with it, and that's the thing I actually really like. Or that's why I'm quite happy to give Far Cry Primal a bit of credit, is, they've actually taken their mechanics and gone and done something in a different direction. It's not, say, the difference between 3 and 4, where, well, I played 3, got bored. You know, I enjoyed it enough, but I got bored in about 5-10 hours, and 4 seemed exactly the same. And that's why again I quite liked actually looking at Blood Dragon again, because that actually looked like an original, take on their gameplay mechanics, but they've managed to make enough of a unique experience out of it, and Primal feels the same.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a fair argument, but I find myself going back on the thing, even though I want to play Primal, I'm kind of well aware that it's going to be very similar to 3 and 4, despite the kind of cosmetic changes and the things like not being able to drive around, because the fact is that it's relying on the same Ubisoft model that they've been using for about 80% of their games, including Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs and everything else, except for the kind of random little indie title like Child of Light or something like that, is that, the climbing the radio towers, the hunting to gather pouches for your numerous random crappy arrow things
for
or
your
whatever.
rocks now.
Yeah, yes, you're brilliant rocks. and like, I don't know, I guess pouches were a thing in Primal times. That's fine.
I guess they they shot themselves in the foot a bit by developing the bow mechanics already in like the last 2 games, because like they could have that could have been the one thing they pushed out a bit with Primal, but they've already done bows like a lot.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
I mean, but I think the thing for me though is I think what I really see as the value and the thing of interest is the fact you are and what I'm really interested in seeing, especially from the AI and the programmer designer point of view, is actually seeing how they do the animal battles or the animal behavior. And I think that's something where I just feel like I don't think there's a game that does a really good or I've seen a game that has really good animal AI. I think that could be a really cool feature, a unique feature to Far Cry Primal. And I've heard very good things about that. So again, there's that feeling of actually, I don't know if I could play that elsewhere at this point. I do feel I could play a copy of Far Cry 3 in another shooter somewhere, or Far Cry 4, Assassin's Creed in some fashion, whatever else. I don't think I know of the game where I can say, I can play or use animals, enjoy animals in such the same fashion that Far Cry Primal would potentially offer.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would happily play a properly good dog simulator, because Nintendogs was not good enough, frankly. And I played that a little bit.
Well, whatever fetishes you have, like.
Whoa!
Just keep it about the game, like. Darko6977 has mentioned that he doesn't like the lack of explosions in the game.
That's a fair point.
Which I guess compared to Just Cause 3, like. Didn't
you could probably hit 2 rocks together and make a few sparks, but
Didn't cavemen used to burn down complete forests in order to flatten out the land as well? Didn't they do that? That's a thing that happened, I think.
I think I came much later.
It does have fire as well, so I don't know. I assume that in the game you can do a fair bit of the fire stuff, but it's not an explosion, is it? Let's be honest.
I remember.
So I can see his point.
Burning the weed farms in Far Cry 3. And
yeah, I think everyone remembers that.
Skrillex and stuff. That was fun. More of that. There's none of that
brilliant.
In Primal. Nothing like that, is there? Really, it's very different to the others. And one of the questions was just you, Ryan. So Ryan, I imagine you've written some game reviews in your life.
Yeah, just a few.
Just a few, yeah. So if you're a journalist, right, and you've played Far Cry 3, and then they released Far Cry 4 the next year, which is still the same, but it's a good game. But it's very much the same. How do you go about reviewing that? So say if a developer releases a very similar game that's almost at the same bar, but it's obscenely similar to the previous game, how would you give that a score?
So the interesting thing is that often this kind of thing goes by publication as opposed to by the journalists. So some publications will essentially tell you that each game you're reviewing is set within itself. It's an individual purchase that someone is making, irrespective of what the purchases they've made in the past. But I mean, my personal view is that's not really the ideal way to go, because the fact is that people that have played Far Cry Primal may have probably played the previous ones, or at least seen them, know they exist. So, you got to look at it in terms of the previous games. And that's the reason why Primal's had such a mixed or a cold response, is that, it's so similar that reviewers and people are just, a bit tired of that kind of system. No matter how much they change the skins, no matter how much they change elements like vehicles and animals, it's going to be the same kind of idea. And they know that. They're happy with that. Ubisoft are going to make money out of that.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've already made plenty back on their investment in it. And I'm going to buy it, and I know it's going to be stupid and the same. So maybe that just gives a big indication of the audience right there, is people that are aware of its terrible familiarity, but people that are happy to stick with it because it's still kind of fun.
And I don't really like to be dictated what to buy by reviews and by journalists. Ugh.
I wish I could say that, but
it's true. Yeah. And it's getting, so Far Cry 5 on PC at the moment, it's getting a 75 on Metacritic, which is a pretty good score. Probably do better if the previous games didn't exist, but
definitely true.
Definitely, yeah. So there you go. So if you have just joined us, this is the Game Debate LiveCast, where each week we go over industry news with people from inside the gaming industry. This week we're with Ryan, who is a games journalist, and Lucas, who is the founder of the newly established Good Sport Games, who's also soon going to be talking about his first new title, which is going to come out later this year, which is about corruption in sport.
Yeah, sports. It's a politics game dressed with some sort of sports. But again, I'll explain it all in a bit. But just keep the cliffhanger going.
As long as I can play out all my House of Cards fantasies. So I just finished off House of Cards Series 4.
I need to watch that
today.
No spoilers. Yeah.
It's good. It's a good series.
It's a great series.
Cool. Okay, so moving on. So the next topic this week. So since we last spoke, we've had a bit more information around the VR world. So, wrong button. Let me blow it up. The Oculus banner. There we go. So we've had a bit more of. So we've had some information about the Vive pricing now. Oculus pre-orders have been open for quite a bit as well. So we're sort of at a point now where we can have a bit more of a frank discussion about what headset's doing best, what you should buy. So I think at the moment it's quite difficult because I don't think many people sort of know the main difference between the Oculus and the Vive, and they're coming out at very similar price points, but they also have very significant differences about how they work, and specifically more about how they work on launch. So if you first of all go over, so I've made a quick slide, which I flashed up a second ago. So the price of the Rift in the UK is £499 or $599 $599 in the US, and the Vive is £689 in the UK or $799 dollars. Oh, I got it wrong twice in the US. If you do pay with euros or anything, I'm sorry that I didn't include your pricing, and please do forgive me.
Currency is okay with us.
Yeah, we don't have any issues. There's no discrimination. There's no hate for the euro here. So the recommended specs, as you probably know. So for the Oculus Rift and for the Vive, they're fairly similar. So you need either a 790 or a Radeon R9 290, which is both the same. 770, yeah, 970. Man, I just can't read or talk today. Which is the same for both. You also need an i5 or an AMD FX 835. I don't know why I can't read words today. My brain just doesn't work. So you need basically the same Intel i5 or AMD equivalent. 4 gig plus RAM for the Rift and 8 gig for the Vive, which is a weird, interesting thing. So for the Rift, you need HDMI 1.4 DisplayPort, same, boring. A USB 2 port or 2 USB 2 ports. That's actually wrong on the Oculus because you need 4 USB ports. I'm recommending, and Windows 7 or newer as the operating system, which is as expected, I guess. Hopefully, Microsoft don't lock out the Windows before the Vive and the Oculus comes out, and no one can install any applications.
Yeah, they won't approve it in the store.
Don't worry, Tim. We're watching for it. We'll be on the case if that happens.
Yeah.
So I think if we start this from a question from the chat, so Darko6977 has asked, do we think that VR is the future of gaming?
Big question.
That's a big question.
Who wants to answer that? Ryan?
So I will start by saying, yes, I do. And that feels like a horribly big thing to say. But having tried the Vive and the Rift, and especially the Vive, with some pretty cool apps, including I always forget what it's called, something Space Trainer.
Space
Cowboy
Pirate
Space-
Trainer.
Space Pirate, that's it. I always think it's Cowboys. I don't know why. Space Pirate Trainer was the one. For me, that was like the point where I was just like, okay, there is really, really something here that can be built on and developed. And the fact is, everyone that I've seen try VR, everyone that's tried VR, has basically been like, okay, there's definitely something going on here, something that's worth developing on and looking at. So in that way, I think it is the future of gaming. How long that future will take to realize is a very different point. And whether it will come about through what is now our modern incarnation of VR is another question as well. Like, will the Rift and HTC Vive and PlayStation VR, will they be the ones to really launch it? Or are we actually kind of looking even further down the road?
Fritz and Source seems to think that porn will be the key driver of VR.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Next question.
No, I mean, I agree in that way.
Well,
You can't ignore that.
They push streaming video. The reason we have YouTube and stuff now is because porn worked hard at developing streaming technology and stuff. I mean, a lot of all new tech. Anything, if it gets taken up by porn, then usually it's a fairly safe bet that
Thumbs up.
everything else. That's disgusting, Ryan. Jesus.
Oh, sorry. Not that way.
But yeah, porn. That's the thing. In VR, and it's happening a lot. There's a lot of documentaries about VR porn, and I should mention as well at this point that we all have both played on the Oculus consumer headset and had quite an extensive bit with the HTC Vive Pre as well. So
I was worried where you were going with that.
so we have
Yeah.
So we have played on both devices quite extensively. So I think we are in quite a good position to give recommendations of what you'd rather buy. So I mean, yeah, when it comes to Lucas, then from your perspective, when it comes to the Vive and the Rift, what do you think are like the key differences?
Well, the key differences, I suppose. I would say the display is pretty similar, and two versions of both, and the display is pretty similar, and that's good. I mean, obviously, then the other thing really is just the tracking, like in terms of the Oculus is definitely set out to be a sit down or stand up but stationary experience at this point. Whereas the Vive obviously tracks your heads and moves you around. You can walk in the space and it'll track your position. And so I mean they're the key differences. And I mean, what I'm interested to see is if developers will jump to one bandwagon or the other.
Yeah.
And my answer is, I think eventually, I think there is a interesting thing where neither side has a killer app at this point.
Yeah.
And still be a big risk for big players to get involved at this stage. I know like Eve, Valkyrie are doing it. I know that other spaceship game, the Frontier one.
Elite Dangerous,
yeah. They're obviously involved, but they're still relatively small players compared to say, Activision and one of their studios involved or something like that. And the other thing being obviously the price is just really expensive. So I mean, I don't think a large number of consumers will be able to buy one until the price comes down. That might be 4 or 5 years yet.
Yeah, I think one of the key things to mention as well is what a lot of people are saying at the moment is about whether they'll be able to play Oculus games on the Vive, whether they'll be able to play Vive games on the Oculus. And I think moving forward, it's definitely a possibility that developers will look at doing that route. But they are very different platforms in that sense. So
yeah, that's true. But I'd also argue that at the moment, it's kind of true that they are sharing platforms quite nicely. Like a lot of the games that are on Vive are on the Rift and vice versa.
Yeah.
Like the ones that really are big difference is things like fantastic contraption on the Vive, where you need like a whole play area to move around in and stuff like that. But it's not a long shot to see many games coming out for both, but then having your exclusives in the same way we have Sony and Microsoft now. Although don't tell VR enthusiasts that, because they get scared when you talk about polar opposite platforms and having different market stores reach and all that stuff.
Palmer lucky as well. So even though there is no room tracking in the Rift as of yet, they actually have said that there is going to be full scale room tracking on the Rift. I'm right saying that, aren't I? They have said that.
Yep.
So even though they're not showing it, they're saying that it exists as well. And I think for me, that's the key thing between the Oculus and the Vive, is that Oculus have definitely rushed out to be first. I mean, with it coming with an Xbox controller, to me it sort of stinks a bit of, we've rushed this out a bit too late. Like, the Oculus Touch controllers don't come with the first launch box, which I think personally is a big mistake for it. If you do get the Vive, even though it is a bit more expensive, you get that full room scale tracking, you get controllers with it to actually properly play games, and you get everything you need. Whereas the Oculus, it's still very much more of an unfinished product, I think, than the Oculus is at this point. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, I do agree, but I'd say that in a way the Oculus Rift is trying to be a slightly different system, which does fit the kind of Xbox in your hand idea, rather than the controllers walking around in an open space. And Lucas made a good point earlier about having a room and actually having the space. It's quite a different idea. I guess, Lucas, you can talk about that,
I think also in my head, Oculus is slightly targeting a more corporate and position, and if you like, their concern is not just games; it's other things as well. It is making marketing experiences where people can just they can just for business, for agencies who want to show off their products or things like that. I think the Vive is just immediately much more game orientated in terms of how it's been approaching people anyway. But then I say, I think that is the other challenge again, like with the Vive, is there is this obstacle space, and being lucky enough to have a lot, which I don't think many people, especially in like city centres and things, will have enough. The space in their flats or small houses, or whatever else, to just be able to set up the Vive with its little light boxes and then just carry on. But we'll see. And I mean, the other branch that Oculus have is their mobile side, which is quite interesting. So they'll have their with Samsung, they have the Gear headset, and so that's an interesting branch for them as well, where just gives them more. They can learn from more, more branches themselves.
It's good you brought up the differences between Oculus and Valve and HTC, because I think if I was gonna sink like all this money into like a VR headset, do I want to go with this unknown company that came from Kickstarter, that set everything up and then got bought by Facebook and are doing pretty much everything? Their consumer-driven line, like their supply chain's all completely new. Their game library's all going to be completely new. They don't have anything they can really feed into. They have to do everything from scratch. Or would I rather trust Valve and HTC, both with HTC? They have proven track records of releasing products. Valve, they can tap up the entire games industry. And I think when it comes down to safe or bets, who would I hedge my money with? I think it's got to be HTC and Valve. Just because
I disagree. I don't disagree in terms of. I think the Vive's the better product as it stands today, but I do think the Oculus is trying to spread its bow wider, and I think if it really went very well, they could really corner it. I mean, the big thing for me, for example, is social side, and that's where I think Facebook could really come in to its own. Is if they start making VR experiences purely for Facebook and they get that market penetration, who's going to care about the Vive in 5 years' time? If especially from a dev standpoint, if you want to make money, you can start targeting that as a much larger user base rather than the Vive, which is going to have a smaller percentage. It's a bit like the whole console dilemma of one console being the clear winner and everyone's developing primarily for that one, then the other console gets a small little a sort of rubbishy port.
I think Facebook's market though, it's like they have all the big social reach to people. Oh, the police. They have they have this big reach to people, right? But like, so look at who the type of people that play on Steam and buy games through Steam are the type of people that are going to enjoy this technology the most, potentially. And for gaming, they're going to be the ones most likely to buy it. With Facebook, you got like Candy Crush and like Farmville and all these Facebook kind of games. And I think the markets are just, if you're looking at driving like targeted stuff to people, like, Facebook can make they can push and they can try as they want to get into PC gamers, which they basically are trying to do. But Valve already have all the PC gamers using their systems.
But the PC gamers are still their market, absolutely, but they're not the only market. And I think this is where, if you like, that's the different approach from Valve and from the Vive. Is I think ultimately it doesn't matter this round who wins, as long as who sells more, who does whatever else. It actually matters who has the best potential to reach further.
Yeah.
And by pure definition, by pure volume, I'd have to say that would be Facebook. That is Oculus. We see it more and more where, especially where people go to trade shows or whatever else. You see more and more new people try VR first time, and it doesn't have to be PC gamers to pick it up. There are other people, PC gamers most likely to, because they're innovative, but they can also be quite risk averse. Whereas I think actually it's going to be technology enthusiasts and people like that who are actually going to pick perhaps first, where they're not necessarily quite tied into this idea of games. I think games are a great example where they show the uses of VR. But I think to be honest, again, it will come down to this thing of actually one of them having a killer app that will attract both the hardcore PC game market and a more casual market to its platform. And I think Facebook are in a better position to do that in the longer term.
Ryan, you like trying to talk.
Well, I think that basically you can't underestimate the fact, and I see what you mean in terms of like Oculus being a new company, all that kind of stuff, but you can't underestimate the fact that every time I've seen people mention VR, or if I've spoken to someone about VR, the thing they say is like, oh, that like Oculus thing. And it's like that's very telling. They may be a new company, but they have they're very much representative of what VR is at the moment, and people know that as VR, and that's going to be quite powerful, I think, over the coming year.
Yeah, they've had 2 years of marketing ahead. It's just,
Exactly.
It's just how do you beat that? That's a huge head start.
And I guess go on, sorry.
No, but again, this is the thing is, we have tried both and are lucky enough to have tried both, and we can make that judgment almost based on us trying. There's going to be a huge percentage of the market who don't even get a chance to try either, and they're going to have to make a decision practically blind. Now, who are they going to trust? The company that are associated with absolute, actually kicking off the whole VR trend, or HTC Vive/Valve, who haven't marketed as much. Yes, they have the Steam connection, but we don't actually know what that's worth today. So yeah, I'm not sure it's quite such a clear-cut decision for.
But if you do want to buy one, get the Vive.
But yeah, I agree with that today. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, AOL owned the internet at the beginning, and what's happened to them now?
That's true.
That's true.
In fact, if you look at all the companies that started off on the internet, none of them really innovated quick enough to keep to that. Facebook came later, YouTube came later, Google came later. All like the early starters and adopters people just died out because they got too stuck doing what they're doing. And I think it might be similar with this VR stuff now, whereas in a couple of years, Oculus could collapse and fold, and HTC and Valve will rule. But
I highly doubt it.
You never know. Sticking to the topic though, so if we get on today, I said, right, I've got enough money here. I'll either get you a Vive or an Oculus. Ryan, what would you go for?
Definitely the Vive, as I said. So like, from what I've played, for me it's like a complete transformation of what I've done before when I'm gaming, and that feels like the right way to go. It's just quite an incredible piece of kit, really.
And Lucas?
I'd buy the Vive today, but
hey.
But To be honest, I'd hold off until there was something that that actually was. I mean, there has to be this killer app. There has to be this thing that makes it worth buying one over the other. And if one side made that thing, I'd go with whichever side did it.
Yeah. And so we've got one question from chat that I think we get to answer. So it says, do you guys think that'll be big hardware companies like AMD, Nvidia, Intel will be making their own VR products? Personally, the dilemma is just the beginning of something much bigger. Ryan, what do you think?
So I would say no, which is a very definitive answer, I know. Basically because it's untested water at the moment.
Wait, whoa.
I think that
their own VR products, AMD and Nvidia, make graphics cards, which are basically VR products, I would say.
But there's definitely an argument to say that would be like them releasing a mobile phone or a TV.
What AMD have their they have their own, whatever they call it.
Well, Nvidia have the Shield thing.
Well, they've got but AMD have their VR ready. They've got a thing that's called something. I do know. I'm going to Google it now.
Yeah, but it's a marketing ploy. I mean,
yeah, it's just pure. Yeah,
Nvidia have their VR ready thing, which I can bring
Liquid
up now.
VR, AMD. There you go.
Yeah, but that is just that's a marketing tagline at the moment.
I think it's a slightly different question of yes, they probably might make their own, but will they be successful? I'm not sure they would have and this is going to be the interesting thing at the start of this whole process now is there's other platforms like OSVR, and then Cardboard, and then the Dolphin, the fish one or something.
Fish VR.
Fish VR, whatever that is, and it's just like someone's got to lose, and someone will lose badly, I think, but we'll see.
One day. So if you are watching and you are wondering what to buy and you want to buy something soon, buy a Vive. I think we're saying.
Wait.
The Vive is absolutely awesome.
Seems to be what we're saying.
I think it is.
It is really cool.
It is
so cool.
The Vive is awesome. Cool. So if you have just joined us, this is the Game Debate Livecast. So each week we go over the latest gaming news from people inside the industry. This week, I'm joined by Ryan, who is a games journalist and Vive enthusiast, and Lucas, who is the founder of Good Sports Games, who is going to shortly be talking about his new indie title, which is coming out later this year.
Yeah.
So, Lucas, I believe it's your time to shine.
Is it? Right.
Do you want us to show should we show the trailer first, the green light trailer, before we?
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. It's just hopefully sell the tone quite well.
Okay, cool. 1 second. Right, let's get this trailer up. So, obviously, I have everything ready in front of me to launch.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay, cool.
Waiting with anticipation.
It's playing.
This is Corrupt Cup Contest by Good Sport Games. Inspired by the corruption scandals that occurred at FIFA, the IAAF, and other historical corruption events, Corrupt Cup Contest tasks you with winning the rights to host the World Sport Tournament with a fictitious sporting organisation called GAFS. Players play as bidding associations and must convince voting associations to vote for them, and can schmooze, accuse, and bribe their way to victory. Over multiple tournaments, you must keep fighting for favour whilst ensuring the media and authorities don't notice any of your potential dodgy doings. Corrupt Cup Contest is scheduled for an early access release in 2016. Please vote for us on Greenlight and follow us on Twitter and Facebook.
Cool. So, Lucas, how did this game come about?
So, I saw the headlines and scandals that have been going on that have occurred at organisations such as FIFA, the IAAF, the Athletics Federation, basically, and there's other things throughout history. but yeah, it's just quite a funny thing where I saw that scandal and thought it'd be quite funny to make a sort of collaborative / competitive but collaborative multiplayer experience where you have to try and compete as a dodgy delegate or potentially dodgy delegate to try and win the global sports tournament for your country. And it's basically planned to be released. Early access is meant to be planned for midway this year, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, trying to do the green light at the moment, so that's be good to get that out in time for that. But and basically, you have quite a limited budget, so you're trying to strategize your expenditure of that, and the idea being you can be really nice and really
Evil.
Well, you can either be really evil or really good, and sort of be good in terms of but you can do good actions. You can host a fancy dinner. You can invite delegates over to your country. You can run a PR campaign, for example. But they're all really expensive actions, and so they all cost a lot of your budget. Or the flip side is you can be quite sort of corrupt and actually then go, I want to. I want to spend a lot less of my budget, but then do something dodgy which accrues heat. And heat's been quite a central concept of the game, where if you accrue too much, or the more heat you accrue, you get checked every now and then for whether the media will start getting interested. And if the media start getting interested, then it's sort of catastrophe for your campaign, basically, and you lose all your progress. You lose the chance to win the global sports tournament in that round, in that campaign, basically. And you have to start again next round, basically, with all your stats wiped, and you have to sort of begin from ground zero again. And then that's the game. And then what I really want is, or what I think could be really interesting about the game, is the sort of almost diplomacy side, where information is really valuable. So you only know countries who are voting for you and you alone. You don't know you don't know their second or third or fourth preference or anything.
Yeah.
So you have to try and the information you've got is really valuable, and you can sort of, if you want to try and if you really want to, you can try and start sharing, start collaborating, make sort of makeshift alliances where you try and strategize together. But you never quite know if what the other person's saying is true or not. So there might be an event later on that contradicts or reveals some information that contradicts somebody else, and so rivalry can start and things like that. So I'm really interested in that end.
Can you win the game without being corrupt?
It'd be really difficult, but I want to balance it so you could. Yes, there'll be random events and things where for example, the exchange rate might change, so you can spend more and do more with your money for a period of time, and or the media interest might increase, and so more heat for your actions. And so that's the thing. If the right events came up, you theoretically could win being a nice person. But I need all the votes I can get on Greenlight, and it's doing all right. And hopefully going to get some more coverage next week. And Game Debate have very kindly covered it, and PC Gamer. So
yes, we have.
Seems to have struck a few chords actually. So I'm quite happy with it so far.
Cool. And I guess as well. So would you say, if I was going to compare it to sort of any other similar game that's out now, I mean, from the look of it, it looks sort of like I don't know, like almost like game dev story kind of thing, where you're sort of.
Well, I think the comparison's a bit like Democracy 3, sort of, the games by Cliff. What's his name? Klifsky, I think it is. Yeah.
Do you know those, Ryan?
Nope. Well, I know the games. I've played the games. Don't know who made them. But I definitely see the comparison.
Yeah. So it's that thing of and that's what I want is I want each round to be quite a very few select actions in a sort of 2, maybe 5 minute rounds. So you got play 5 or 6 campaigns in the whole game. So you try and win the most tournaments.
Okay.
Each campaign is a tournament, basically. But yeah, I want to try and make it so you're doing very few actions, but doing a lot of discussion, a lot of thinking beforehand, and you're making a sort of good plan, which is constantly sort of having to divert based on what's happening in game, basically. But So I say sort of a sporty version of democracy, which with much more player interaction, or multiplayer interaction.
Cool. And if you are watching the stream now on YouTube, there'll be a link on the video to click, and there's also flying around the screen as the URL.
Yeah,
if you see as well, and it's also in the chat as well. So,
and if you also go if you go to Greenlight, so if you go on your Steam client, go to Community Greenlight on the Steam client, and then search for it. Corrupt Cup Contest in the search bar on the right hand corner. That's the easiest way. The slightly annoying thing being, if you do go through your web browser, you have to log in to Steam, and if you're not logged in before, you have to go through Steam Guard. So it might be simpler just search for it
and
in Steam itself.
And am I right in saying that there's no limit to the amount of Steam accounts someone can make?
There is, because you have to pay $10 to make it a valid account as such. They don't let you vote or anything until you've actually spent something.
I meant more on the voting side there.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Make
basically,
about 50 accounts and just like them all.
yeah, you have to. Yeah, but I need enough votes to get to the top 100, and I'm about halfway actually. So anything will help. But yeah, doing all right.
Cool, awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Lucas and Ryan, for being on this week. I hope you had fun, and thanks a lot as well, Lucas, for being on and letting us know about the game. We'll definitely
thank you.
And pushing out. And I think we've just run out of time for today, which is sad. So thanks a lot for everyone in the audience for watching. Thanks for taking part and asking questions. We are going to be on next week live at the same time from 5 till 6 on Sunday in the UK. Or if you do live somewhere else, it'll be the same time but a different time. Cool. So
it's the same time, Tim. It's the same time.
Well, yeah, it's the same time but a different time.
It's the same time to them, though.
Well, yeah, but to us, it's a different
that's
time.
what matters.
But I know it's not going to be at 5:30, is it? That's my point, mainly.
Fine. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
I feel like they get the idea.
I feel like I'm over-explaining it now.
I think you are.
Yeah. But thanks a lot, guys.
Quick exit.
Cool. 4 a.m. 4 a.m. Someone's watching it here. See?
Well done. That is commitment.
That is. I mean, I would watch it any time of the day.
Yeah, so would I.
Cool, guys. Well, thanks a lot again, chat, and we'll be back next week. Bye.
Bye.